All right. So the assignment currently posted is preliminary. As you can see, the specification says preliminary because it only has the review. So this is going to be our review work on servlets and JSPs and just get our memories or jog our memories on how those things work. And then we're going to start implementing the JPA in it. But in the spec so far, I haven't put any of that requirement in yet because I haven't decided how much we're going to do in this project and then how much we're going to do in the next one. But this will look familiar to you because it's based on a Java 3 assignment that I do almost every semester, have done for several semesters, so I think everyone has seen this one. It's the club DB, fairly simple. I did modify the script, the build script slightly, so we are now working with club 294 as the database. So if you want to start downloading all of those items, I'm going to put them on my C drive here in a folder, which I will build for the class. So I'm going to have an IS-294 folder. And so you've got the MySQL script that we'll run in a moment. You've got the specification, such as it is preliminary now, that we'll take a look at and use. And then, even better, I have what I hope is a working Java 3 Club DB version, and this doesn't change very much from time to time, from semester to semester. But if you didn't have the Java 3 with the 3rd edition of Murroc, then you also didn't do connection pools and prepared statements. So those are in this version of the project, and we may need to talk a little bit about those items. Okay. So I guess the first order of business will be to remind ourselves of how we can load and examine a database in MySQL. So we did the install last week. Everyone should have on your list somewhere on this drive. It's right at the top because it was recently added. But command line, so MySQL command line client. And if you are using one of our machines, you should have the Sesame password as your access code. And if we show databases, which is one of the commands we'll use from time to time, we've just got some of the default example stuff. And we need to load our own ClubDB. As I say, it's slightly updated from the Java 3 version, so you do need to load this one. And if you have the Java 3 ClubDB or Club database loaded, you can just leave it because this one will load as Club 294, I hope. So we're going to find our file. So my file is in my C drive in the IS-294 folder, and that funny command line client to load a MySQL database is \dot space and then the full path. So I'm C IS-294 and then club294.sql. It's not showing in our Explorer window because of the stupid default that Windows has. I'll fix that in a minute as well. But when you run the script, you will need to put the .sql on the script, but there's no semicolon on this command. Most of the commands in the command window, if you recall, do take semicolons. This one doesn't because it would try to treat the semicolon as a part of the file name. So after you hit enter, it loads some records for us along with 3 tables, and we can now show databases again, and we'll have Club 294. And then if we use Club 294 and show tables, we'll have our members table, our purchases table, and our codes, which are the list of transaction types that can occur in the database. So if you want to do a quick select star from TBL members, semicolon at the end of a command, you can see the data in the members table. Same members, same passwords as were in the Java 3 version. The couple of things that have changed, if you do a select star from TBL purchases, you can just see that I did finally update the transaction dates to be all 2016, so we can think of it as a current operation. And then, if you describe TBL codes, that's really the only place where a significant change occurred. The trans type had to be added to the TBL codes for the project, the first part of the project that we're going to update. So if you do a select star from TBL codes, you'll see that they're now indicated as debit, which are transactions where we sold something, or credit, the payment transaction where they are making a payment against their account. And so that's now included in the codes entry, which for some reason I hadn't done in the original version of ClubDB, although it didn't matter all that much. So is everybody comfortable, back up to speed on MySQL operations? Okay, I'm going to just minimize that in case I do want to go back and look at something in the future. And here was my Explorer window that the view doesn't show the extensions on the files, which just annoys me to no end. So I'm going to go View, Options, Change Folder and Search Options. There's the old style window, which has the View tab, and I remove the check mark on the Hide Extensions for known file types. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hide extensions. So then I have to apply down below and apply up above to make it active for all folders. And there we go. Now we're seeing the actual extensions on those file types. Well, while we're here, we probably ought to dig out that ClubDB project. So just click into the zip file, right-click at that top level folder, and copy it. Put it anywhere you like, of course. I'm going to just bring mine up to my IS-294 folder. And so that should now be loadable in our NetBeans. What in the heck? What drive did I do? Did I use last week? I've got MySQL loaded here, but I don't have NetBeans. That is really, really strange. I'm sorry. I've got too many drives. I need to scale them down to one. We did do the full load, right? We did everything last week. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording and go through my install on this drive for JDK and NetBeans. I apologize that I'm wasting your time by having to do this. So my install is still running for NetBeans, but if we go take a look at the preliminary project specification document, we can remind ourselves of the app, and we can probably, I included just some of the main information from the Java 3 version discussion of this. And you know, this 100 points idea, that I don't know if that's going to end up being true. It might be more. I don't think it'll be less than 100 points when we're all done with this one. But that's also a preliminary guess at the value of the assignment. So we've got these screens, and that's really the way to remind ourselves of what's going on. We've got a login screen, then we have a member update screen, which does allow updates to the member data, and we have the purchases side. Members have the history of their purchases, and so we can take a look at the purchases, either all purchases on file, or we can use that three-part date entry deal to select dates. Now you notice I ran this against the Java 3 version, so it's showing 2012 dates for my purchases, but they're now 2016. And the first thing we're going to do then is add a new operation. So on the bottom of our member screen, we're going to have an add transactions button, which will be a call to a new servlet, and the servlet will allow us to get to a transaction entry page, which is going to be very simple. The date of the purchase, we'll put it in as a string in the format that our database expects it. The transaction code is not really a code. That's a little misnomer, because I've got a drop-down. So we're going to incorporate one of those things from the final project as well, where we build a little set of our descriptors and build them as a drop-down on the form. And then there's an amount, and you'll add the transaction that way. And the idea is that you can continue to add transactions. So you'll keep coming back to this screen for your add transactions until the user decides to return to the member screen. And there's just the drop-down as it exists or should exist for all of the transaction types that we have right now. Okay, so our first job is going to be building this screen and getting it incorporated into the application, which I can't do until my NetBeans install is done. So not quite there. I'll pause the recording again, and we'll come back when I'm ready to go. All right, now that I'm operational again on NetBeans, I will do an open project, and we'll remind ourselves of what this little ClubDB project does, and see if the one I gave you is actually functional. It seemed to be. I actually had a little disaster occur with my drives. It was really the drive from Spring, and I told them they could take the other drives but leave me the IS-288 drive. But in Spring we had a classroom section and an online section, and so he took my classroom section drive and left me the online section drive, which had nothing on it. And so all of my recent projects that I had on my drive went away when the techs rebuilt. So my fault for not being more specific. But so I've cobbled this together. I guess what I'm trying to say is I cobbled it together from several different places, and I hope that it's going to be accurate and working here. But if we remind ourselves of the logon page, very simple, nothing really here except a little expression language goodies regarding a cookie. But the login page based on the web XML file, so there are all of our servlets and the URLs that launch those servlets. So based on the XML file, the logon servlet is fired by the club logon action, which is what the form action is on the logon JSP. So there's your form action club logon. So it goes to the club logon servlet. And in this project, when we started it, we were kind of building up to connection pools and prepared statements. So this very first servlet does not have that in it. It has the old style of connection building, where you have your URL for the database connection string, and then your password and your user ID. So I think at some point you should look into updating those all. But the servlet builds the member screen, of course, if it authenticates and has the little cookie. What you might want to take a look at, I think I've updated, I'm kind of looking around at things here to make sure I've updated for the Club 294 database name change. So in the connection pool, we are looking for the resource that is ClubDB 294, and that resource name is up in the meta INF context XML file. And so if you look at that, when we get to connection pools, the there it is, yeah, the name is ClubDB 294 as far as the resource goes. The URL is still the same, Club 294, username and password are good, and so I think that resource will work for the connection. Oh, and the other, I just realized I did not put I didn't do the shortcut of putting the jar file, the connector jar, in the JDK folder. Did we do that last week? No. Okay, let's do that quickly. So if you go back to, and this just makes NetBeans work a little smoother. So if you go back to your Oracle website, I thought I'd forgotten that, and you go to MySQL page. After you start getting into the download for the MySQL, but we obviously don't have to download that again. But over on this next page, or on this page that has the download for the community server, there are also MySQL connectors. And so if you click on that, this will have the latest version of the JDBC connector for Java, and that's connector J. So that's the one I want to download just to put it in the JDK for Java, so NetBeans we can make use of the NetBeans services that are internal. All right, so the connector J download is just a zip file. So we just need that zip archive. So if you download that, it wants you to log in, but has the usual no thanks, just start my download step. And I'm going to save them. I don't need to open it yet. I'm going to save it just into my downloads folder. Didn't take too long. So now if you right-click and open the containing folder, or use an Explorer window and get to your downloads area, you've got a zip file that for the connector. It has some other stuff in it. We don't need the other stuff. So here, everybody have it downloaded? Well, you can actually just to this Explorer window. Yeah. So this was from the main download. So when you get to the so when you start your downloads, you ask for the community edition, and then on that page, that second page, connectors link is over on the left. And then connector J, yeah. And so we just take the zip archive, yeah. All right, so the zip file is here. I'm just going to dig into it and grab the item I need, which is another level down. And it's the jar file, the MySQL connector jar. So I'm going to click copy. And then where it goes is in the C drive program files, Java, JDK, not the JRE. At this level, you have to choose the JDK 101. But then once you're inside the program files, Java, JDK, then you go JRE, LIB, EXT. So there's the whole list right there at the top. You can see it that way. And you right-click and paste. So the sequence is program files, Java, the JDK first, and then the JRE folder that's inside the JDK. And then LIBEXT, and just drop it in there. These machines are asking to verify changes to the system folders, but annoying, but I guess we can't get around it. Right. The x86 program files are older, 32-bit stuff as far as I know. So we want the program files without the x86. Okay. So I think we've got our connector jar where we want it. So that's the JDBC driver that'll allow us, we can use the services tab now without too much trouble. But let's see, so the connection pool is looking at the resource, which has the right information. The connection pool is used in the show purchases servlet, I believe. So if we go to that last servlet and look down, the connection pool.java was a class file that was provided really by our Muroc author. And so we just adapted his connection pool.java program, and it has a get instance call, and after you have a pool instance, you can create a connection from the pool and then a statement and do all your stuff. So you can actually create prepared statements or regular statements, and I guess we just created a regular statement there, but the pool is the one that gives us the connection, and then the rest of the stuff is pretty much normal. We created a result set, ran through the result set to build our purchase objects and our array list of purchase objects, and that's what comes out on the screen. So after all of that preliminary, oh, and don't forget down here, I hope I have it in the right spot, because it wasn't in the program I was looking at when I was copying code around. Make sure you have the free connection call in the pool. If you don't free your connection, your system will hang after a couple of operations because it's waiting for connections to be available out of the pool for some reason. Anyway, if you look at the project properties, I think I have it set on the run to use the latest Tomcat that we get, EE7, and it's set to actually just use Firefox, my preferred browser at this point. So those settings are in place. If you want to change them, of course, you can. Let's see if it'll run. Okay, yeah, we've got to allow access again. Allow access again. Come on. Allow access. So annoying. Well, it came up, the login screen. Let's see if we've got capability of reading the database. So Z005 is one of our users. 293 is the password that is current in that user. And if you do a login, ta-da, you've got your member screen, and you can view transactions. 293, it's numeric, yeah. And there you go. So we've got an operational system. Oh, happy day. Back to member screen, back to login screen. So that's where we're finally starting when we want to expand our application to now include this transaction building. So the first, we just tested our app and it did seem to work. So everyone saw the same result. You're functional on the app that I gave you does in fact function. Okay, so good deal. Well, we need to go to our member screen JSP and add another form call. So the view transactions form, which has an action of show purchases, is no longer the very last one. I'm going to come down, let's see, I'll do it in here. Anywhere you like after the view transaction button, we are going to build a new form, and I set the action as add trans with method of post here in my notes. I'm not terribly tied to that, but that's what you'll see on the screen as I build it. So add trans is the action, and the only thing we need is, again, a little button, a submit button for this form. So I'm going to grab the submit button that's right above me on the view transaction history and put it in, but of course, instead of view transactions, we will now have it say add transactions, because that's what we're doing. And that leads us to the next step of actually getting ourselves a servlet, which will do the job. And there are a few other goodies that we're going to need along the way. Let's see. I guess I'll go to the servlet first. In your servlets folder, everybody have the JSP updated? So right-click on your servlets folder and ask for a new servlet. It's there somewhere. There we go. And so this is add trans servlet. If you follow my naming style that I've used in the past. So add trans is the action. I'm therefore going to call the servlet that goes with that action add trans servlet. But when we go to build our XML mapping, we do want to add the information to the deployment descriptor. The servlet name is add trans servlet, but the URL pattern does not include the word servlet. It just is add trans. And I think that was done originally just so that the user couldn't detect that, oh, they're using servlets, which means they're using Java, and therefore there are certain exploits. It just hides a little bit of how the system is operating. Okay, so add trans URL pattern, add trans servlet is the intercept class, and I think we're ready to go. Everybody with me on the servlet building? This is all Java 3 review items, I hope. Okay, so we've got an add trans servlet, which still, NetBeans still builds a little default output to the response object, which we don't want. So I'm just clearing out some comments so I've got more. So I like to, I mean, there's no point in having the print writer writing directly to the response object. So we're going to delete that again, the try block that's there. And we're ready to write our own bit of servlet code. Yeah, I think we'll write the servlet first and then finish up with the JSP that will be the view for the input page for our new operation. So we're going to have a string URL, and where we hope to go after this servlet is add trans JSP is all I called mine in my notes. So we've got an add trans servlet, which is going to go to an add trans JSP. I'm going to have a messaging system, probably, and I will need some SQL code, so string SQL variable. Well, here we go. We're right at already. We need an object because of that drop down that we're going to build on our input form. We need an array list of a type of object we don't have yet. So I'm going to have an array list of trans objects. We'll call it transcode. I don't know if that's a good name or not. That's what I have in my notes. So an array list of transcode data objects called codes will be a new array list, and we'll have to do the import for that array list, of course, so you can click on your red circle and let it import array list. And now the only thing it's not happy with is the fact that we don't have this thing called a transcode. That comes from the MySQL TBL codes file. So if you look at TBL codes, we need an object that can encapsulate, and this gets back to object relational mapping. We're going to have a plain old Java object, which is actually a map to every record or a record layout of the TBL codes table. So let's build it. Should be very simple. It's only 3 items, right? So on your business class, right-click and ask for a new Java class. It's just a regular old Java class called transcode, transcd. And in this class, we will have 3 globals, which are all strings, I guess. Let me quickly look at my transcode. Yeah. So I have a private string list of trans code, trans type, and trans description. And so that matches the table description. They're all you don't have to on your global variables. If you like to follow that capitalization, when we encapsulate the fields, it'll put the capitals in the right spot. So we're going to have a public constructor for transcode that takes the empty constructor required of any Java bean, as you should recall. And so transcode gets an empty value, trans type an empty value, and trans description the same. And now we're ready to run the refactoring to encapsulate our fields, and it'll write all the rest of the little get and set methods. So I can go up to my transcode object, the .java, right-click, refactor, encapsulate fields. We want them all, so we can do a select all here. We need a get for transcode, transtype. Now it is leaving the names with the second words in lowercase. I'm okay with that, but it will capitalize the T of the word trans. And it's back to default comments. I don't like those default comments. They don't do anything for me. So I'm going to switch the Java doc to none, but that should do it. And we quickly refactor, and voila, we've got a plain old Java object that will store all the information necessary for a transaction item, a transaction code item. Everyone seems to be doing fine in the classroom, so I assume it's all coming back to you in waves of nausea or something. Anyway. All right. Well, now if we go back to our servlet and wait for a moment, it will be, oh well, no, we can't wait. We have to do our import. Now it should know about transcode, so we should be able to import business.transcode. And there it is. So our next task is to actually read that table and build the item. So we'll do this in a try-catch structure. And we will have our connection pool. So connection pool, which I've just been calling pool elsewhere, is a connection pool.getInstance method call. Now that's interesting. Did it do the import for me? Yeah, it did the business connection pool import for me automatically for some reason without having to tell me that it couldn't find the symbol. Then we're going to get our connection. So the actual connection object, CONN, will come from the pool. So pool get connection. Java SQL connection. We do need the import for the connection. There you go. Then I will create my SQL call. Yeah, Java SQL connection. So my SQL code is just select star from TBL codes. You can choose to order by. I'm going to order by. Oh, let's order by the trans description. I guess yeah, that's the way I did it on the sample on the spec. So trans description will be the sort order. Oh, and you know, I don't think you have to match the casing. You know, it used to be that the Java connector would fail if you didn't match in your SQL commands and your result set calls, match exactly the name of the field with the upper and lower casing. Well, of course, in the SQL call it won't matter, but in the result set calls it used to matter, and I think that's finally been fixed. So we will create a prepared. I mean, there's really no reason not to have a prepared statement, although you could argue that there's just no reason that you need a prepared statement, but we'll do it that way. So we're going to have a prepared statement PS, which will be from the connection, prepare statement using the SQL string. And if I didn't spell it incorrectly, it wants an import again. So we'll import Java SQL prepared statement. And now we're ready to get our result set. So we'll have result set R as a ps.execute query. So it's not an update query. And once again, we've got to add the import for the Java SQL result set. What doesn't it like? Oh, now I have an, oh yeah. Right, there are no field entries that we need to add into our, no data parameters that go into our prepared statement. So that's why it was arguable whether we had to do a prepared statement, but we should probably get in that habit. Okay, so the catch is what it's complaining about now, that I don't have the catch in place. So we'll go ahead and put the catch, and right now I'm just going to do the biggest exception I can, so the most general exception, and that will cause me to put a message in my MSG variable, error reading transcodes, and we need to change, so the URL destination changes. If we were not able to run this servlet, we do have to go back to the member screen. So we'll do a /memberscreen.jsp as our return. And we'll put the message attribute on the request object. Let me just double check my member screen. Yeah, MSG was the expression language call to the message. So we will put request.setAttribute, for MSG, and the variable is the same. So there's our catch. However, if the result set comes back, we need to build our array list of objects so that we can then do the same in our JSP. So we will say while r next, back up in the try here, we will create a single instance of transcode. So transcode CD equals a new transcode. So there's our call to the empty constructor of transcode. And we will use the result set to do all of our sets. So cd.setTranscode will be an r.getString. Oops, mistyped that. And the name is transcode. Now here I'm going ahead and following the upper and lower case. This is what I was talking about with the MySQL driver. Used to require, you know, if your table field names actually had upper and lower case components, it required them in the same order. That's why I'm in the habit of doing that. But as I say, I think we are okay without that. But we set our transcode, and then we do a set trans description, which is an r.getString for trans description. And then finally, a set trans type, r.getString for trans type. So we've created an individual transcode object from the result set. We now just add it into our array list of codes. So codes add CD. So this one's not too complex. When the while loop is done, we need to start closing everything. So I'm going to do an R close. The result set is closed. The prepared statement can be closed. And then the pool has a free connection which requires CONN. And then I think we should go ahead and close the connection after that, although that one might not be all that critical. Okay, and the very end then, if we're still in the try, everything went well, we can do the posting of the codes to the session, or you can do it to the request object, which would be, I guess we don't need it on the session. We can just do a request set attribute. The attribute is codes, and the object is codes. So that'll only persist for one post-back cycle. Oh, you know what? Let's put it on the session. Just thinking ahead to, if they're using the form multiple times, let's do it on the session. So get session dot set attribute. Whoops, I did that at the wrong spot. So sorry. Hold on. Message still goes in the catch. Message is the attribute on request, but in the try, we can do a get session dot set attribute. Okay, so the line I just fixed or changed was 52 on my my form. Yeah, the question mark would only be as a part of the prepared statement on SQL, and we're getting all the records, all the fields from all records of the table, so there's nothing to really put in as a parameter. Correct. You don't. The prepared statement is not a prepared statement is not required here, but it will work. Okay. I think we're ready to forward. So request after the try catch block. Request dispatcher. Disp is get servlet context dot get request dispatcher based on URL. That does require an import. And then we forward. So disp forward the request and the response objects. But remember that we're actually forwarding to a JSP page, so we're still going to be on the server, still running server-side processes. I just this week got to tell my Java 3 students that that's the key to understanding web development. Remember what runs on the server and what runs on the browser. And of course, for our purposes, almost everything runs on the server. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to try to build. And sorry I didn't have this available for you. I probably should have done this as a download. But we're ready to build that add trans JSP. That's what I called it. So add trans JSP is where it goes next. Now that's just the input page for the transactions. So let's go up to our web pages right at the top of our project, and we'll right click and go for a new JSP. There it is. And this is going to be add trans JSP, just standard syntax. So we will click finish. All right, what are we going to need? Well, we are going to need the JSTL. So we're going to have the tag lib, but I think we've got it elsewhere, don't we? Certainly on the purchases JSP, we've got the tag lib entry for the JSTL core, and it's already, that library is already loaded into our project, which we would have to do if we were starting from scratch. So you can go to the purchases JSP and grab that tag lib line, and then back to add trans and post it in. I have add transactions as my title. And my H1 is transaction entry. And this was kind of crude. I continue to be pretty crude on my HTML pages. Just the bare bones. I'm interested in the background stuff. Okay. We're going to put in the user's name. So let's do an H2 entry that calls. Now we've already got in the system as a session object the member, which is M. I think I put it on as M. I hope I did. Let me look at that member screen again. Yeah. So the data element for the member, him or herself, is M. So expression call to m.memid, and then expression call to m.firstname. space or comma expression call to m dot last name. Again, however that formatting works out, I'm not sure. We could just copy it from one of the other pages. Okay, so we're going to see the member on this screen. Let's have a little break line, and here we go with our form. So this form, the input form, has an action of post trans, because they're going to enter, and the method is post, they're going to enter a transaction, and there's going to be a submit button, and it'll have a post operation. That's your homework for the week. Get the post transaction functionality working in the project. But we're still not quite there in terms of our JSP page. So let's see, I've got a table that starts here, and the first row of the table has an entry, a cell entry that says purchase date, YYYY-MM-DD. And then the second cell of the row is the actual input field. And I just am using the table again to give myself a little structure on the page. So we have an input type equal text with an ID of, I called it trans DT, name the same, trans DT. There's no value entry, so we can just, I think we can just leave it at that. Now the second row is my transaction code, or we can just say transaction if you want. So the transaction is, now this is where we need to make use of the codes array list. So I'm dredging up the selection drop down from the Henry Books final. So in this cell, we have to do a little bit more. We're going to select or create a select object. I called it trans CD. So name is the same. So trans, I'm calling it transcode even though it's, I mean, that's a part of it. Okay. So there's your select boundary, and here we go. We're now going to use the for each of our JSTL. So C colon for each. So this is going to give us iteration capability. And for each variable, which I'll call CD code, from the items list, which is expression language call to the codes list that we posted. So for each of those, we will create an option tag whose value is expression language call again, cd.transcode. So this goes back to the transcode class we just built. The value is going to be the actual code, so the next servlet can read the code as a code entry. But the description will be the expression call to cd.transDescription. And that got a little away from me on my page there. Let me bring that down. Okay, we've got a closing for each. We've got a closing on the select. We've got a closing on the cell and the table row. So I think that's it. So that's our ability to use JSTL to iterate over the codes array list and produce our drop-down list. The final row has a cell for the amount. So amount is the cell, the first cell, and the second cell is another input. So we're going to have an input of type text with ID. I put in trans AMT for ID and name. No value. So I think we can stop it there. And we've got 3 elements on the table. After the table, we need to be able to submit. So I'm going to put a break line down here. Still inside the form, though. The post-trans form. And did I forget it? Oh, no, there it is. So it will be input type of submit. Value is going to be post, whoops, I'm outside my quotes, post transaction, or add transaction, doesn't really matter. Then the form is done. We should probably get ready for the message, although it's not really that critical. I'll leave you to put that in if you find you need it. Let's break after form, and the last entry, I know we're just out of time, is an href link back to member screen JSP, return to member screen. Whew, well, that was a lot of typing with not too much chance to check, to do any testing, but I'm going to do a quick test, see if I can get to that page and if it seems to have the drop-down that I expect it to have. So let's run it. I'll come right back. So I'm going to log in as my Zimmerman record. I do have add transactions now down here. I get to add transactions, and it crashes. Okay, what didn't it like? First name. It didn't like first name. What did I do? I should have looked. Okay, so let's go back and look at the member screen. What is it calling those? Oh, first, last NM, first NM. I didn't spell out name, so there's my. So on this page, first NM, last NM. I don't need a comma there. That would be if I did it reversed. Okay, so let's try again. Oh, my cookie's working. Hey, now I think I'm somewhere. All right, drop down in place. Whew, well, that was a little faster than I was planning on going because of my delay that I had to take you through on my installs. But I'm getting to that page, so this week, make it work. And next week, we'll see how well you did, and then think about what else we want to put in the project in terms of the persistence, or start to put in the project in terms of persistence. So I think that's covered us for tonight, and I will stop the recording.